The stars looked different from Europa's surface. Colder. More distant. I'd spent 15 years staring at them through various viewports. But something about seeing them through Europa's ice crust made them feel like ancient observers, waiting to see what humanity would do next. Colonel Cole, the final thermal diffusers are online. Leviathan is ready for activation sequence. I turned from the observation dome to face Commander Burke, my executive officer, and the only person I'd trust with my life in this frozen hell. Her face was illuminated by the blue glow of Jupiter reflecting off Europa's surface, casting long shadows across her weathered features. It's been a long time coming, Burke. Sometimes I wondered if we'd ever see this day. Having second thoughts, sir? I smiled grimly. About awakening a weapon that could get us all executed for treason? Never. The truth was, I'd had nothing but second thoughts since the day I accepted command of Project Leviathan. Earth had been humiliated for centuries, relegated to a backwater status in the Galactic Council's hierarchy, forbidden from developing military technology, forced to pay tribute in resources and manpower to worlds that looked down on us as primitive savages, barely worthy of spaceflight. The Council claimed it was for our own protection. History suggested otherwise. We walked through the tunnels carved deep into Europa's ice. The distant rumble of thermal exchangers, the only sound beyond our footsteps. 5 years we'd been here, building in secret what the Council had explicitly forbidden. A supercarrier capable of challenging their military dominance. A ship that would either free humanity or condemn us all. Status report, I demanded as we entered the command center. John Teller, my intelligence officer, looked up from his console. All systems nominal, Colonel. The excavation chamber is maintaining temperature, and hull integrity is at 99.8%. The last of the reactor shielding was installed yesterday. And our stealth systems? The Phantom Cloak is operational. Once activated, Leviathan will be invisible to all known Council scanning technology. I nodded, satisfaction mixing with apprehension in my gut. And the crew? 517 personnel, all accounted for and at stations. They're ready, sir. They had to be. We all had to be. Because the moment Leviathan broke through Europa's ice and into open space, there would be no going back. Earth and all her colonies would either gain their freedom or face annihilation. I walked to the central command console and placed my palm on the biometric scanner. The display lit up, recognizing my authority. Computer, display Leviathan. The holographic projection materialized before us, a massive warship unlike anything humanity had ever constructed. 2 kilometers long, its black hull was designed to absorb rather than reflect light. Weapon systems bristled along its flanks, kinetic rail cannons, particle beam arrays, and missile tubes. At its heart lay the Mark 7 core, a power source that the Council had banned in all of its territories for its destructive potential. She's beautiful, Burke whispered beside me. She's dangerous, I corrected. But sometimes danger is the only language tyrants understand. The message alert chimed, drawing my attention to the communications panel. Encrypted transmission, highest priority. I pressed my thumb against the reader, and the message decrypted. Grail, syndicate forces, attacking outer colonies. Council, refusing intervention. Civilian casualties mounting. Activate Leviathan immediately. The message was signed with the private key of our anonymous benefactor, the one who had funded this entire operation from the shadows. I'd never met them, never even spoken directly to them. I only knew that they had provided us with the resources, the technology, and the location to build Leviathan in secret. Sir? Burke's voice pulled me back to the present. I handed her the tablet. The Grail Syndicate is attacking the outer colonies. The Council's doing nothing. Her expression hardened. Pirates. Always the same pattern. They attack. The Council expresses concern, and humans die while politicians debate. Not this time, I said, my resolve hardening. Sound General Quarters. Prepare for launch operations. Burke hesitated. Colonel, the original timeline called for another month of testing before... We're out of time, Commander. People are dying. Leviathan launches in 6 hours. She nodded, understanding the gravity of what we were about to do. Yes, sir. I'll inform the crew. As Burke moved to carry out my orders, I stared once more at the hologram of our creation. 5 years of planning, building, and sacrifice had led to this moment. 5 years of working in secrecy, recruiting only those we could absolutely trust, siphoning resources from a dozen different supply chains to avoid detection. And now we were about to reveal ourselves to the galaxy. God help us all. The awakening of Leviathan was unlike anything I had ever witnessed. The massive engines ignited, melting through the remaining ice barrier that had concealed our operation. Thousands of tons of Europa's surface vaporized as the Supercarrier rose slowly from its hidden berth. Water freezing instantly in the vacuum of space, only to be shattered by the ship's massive hull. I stood on the bridge, watching as the stars became visible through the viewscreen. Around me, the crew worked with practiced efficiency, their training paying off despite the circumstances. Reactor at 80% capacity and rising, reported Lieutenant Commander Reeves from the engineering station. All systems nominal. Phantom cloak engaged, Burke confirmed. We're invisible to standard sensors. I nodded. Navigation. Set course for the Hyperion mining colony. Maximum speed. The helmsman input the coordinates, and I felt the subtle shift as Leviathan's massive engines propelled us forward. The acceleration dampeners worked perfectly, another piece of forbidden technology we'd incorporated into the design. Colonel, Teller called from his station. I'm receiving updated intelligence on the Grail attack. 3 warships, Ravager class. They've disabled the colony's defensive systems and are loading captured civilians onto transport vessels. Slaves, Burke muttered beside me. The Syndicate's been expanding their labor operations. I felt my jaw tighten. The Grail Syndicate had been a scourge on the outer systems for decades, preying primarily on human settlements. The Council consistently claimed the pirates were too elusive to effectively combat. The truth was simpler. Human lives weren't valuable enough to expend resources protecting. Time to intercept? I asked. 4 hours at current velocity, the navigation officer reported. We could arrive sooner if we engaged the skip drive, but... No, I interrupted. We save the skip drive for emergencies only. We don't know if the Syndicate has Council observers with them. The skip drive was our most closely guarded secret, a faster-than-light system that could instantly transport Leviathan across vast distances. If the Council learned we possessed such technology, they would stop at nothing to obtain it. Tactical. Prepare all weapon systems. I want firing solutions the moment we arrive. I turned to Burke. Begin deploying our drones. I want eyes on that colony before we arrive. Deploying reconnaissance drones, she confirmed, tapping commands into her console. As the bridge crew carried out their duties, I withdrew to the small ready room adjacent to the bridge. Once alone, I took a moment to consider what we were about to do. Our first military action. Our coming out party to a galaxy that had dismissed Earth as a footnote in history. The door chimed, and Burke entered without waiting for my response. Our years together had fostered a familiarity that sometimes bordered on insubordination, but I valued her candor too much to enforce protocol. The crew is ready, she said simply. But there's something you should know. What is it? She handed me a data tablet. The Grail ships at Hyperion. They're carrying Council registry transponders. I stared at the data. That's impossible. The Council would never openly support the Syndicate. Not openly, no. But these transponder codes are authentic. These ships were either stolen from Council shipyards or the Council is using pirates to do their dirty work. I completed her thought. Plausible deniability, while they clean out human colonies that are getting too prosperous. Burke nodded grimly. It fits the pattern. The Council keeps humanity dependent by making sure we never develop too much independent infrastructure. I placed the tablet down, a cold anger settling in my chest. Then it's even more important that we succeed today. Prepare the crew for combat operations. I want everyone at battle stations in 3 hours. Yes, sir. She hesitated at the door. Colonel, once we do this, there's no going back. The Council will know we exist. They'll come for us with everything they have. I met her gaze steadily. That's what I'm counting on, Commander. For too long, they've dictated the terms of humanity's existence. It's time we showed them what happens when you back a species into a corner. After she left, I stared at the tactical display showing our approach to Hyperion. In a few hours, we would announce humanity's rebellion to the stars. The Council had spent centuries ensuring Earth remained militarily impotent, stripped of the capacity to defend itself, dependent on their protection. Today, that changed forever. The Hyperion mining colony came into view on our long-range sensors, a cluster of habitation domes and processing facilities clinging to the surface of a resource-rich asteroid. 3 Grail warships hovered above the main settlement, their predatory profiles unmistakable even at this distance. Magnify, I ordered, and the view screen zoomed in to show transport vessels moving between the colony and the largest warship. Each transport was filled with humans, miners, and their families being loaded like cargo. Tactical analysis, I demanded. Teller responded immediately. 3 Ravager-class vessels. Minimal shielding but heavy weapons. The flagship is designated Blood Tide. Approximately 2,000 colonists are being loaded onto slave transports. Life signs? Colony population is showing significant casualties. Medical distress signals from at least 300 individuals. I nodded grimly. Standard Grail tactics. Kill enough to establish dominance. Enslave the rest. Colonel, Burke interrupted. Drone reconnaissance confirms Council transponder signals on all 3 vessels. These are officially licensed privateers. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. The Council wasn't merely ignoring piracy. They were facilitating it. Weapon status, I demanded, breaking the silence. All systems ready. Kinetic cannons charged. Missile tubes loaded. Particle arrays at full capacity. I settled into the command chair. Navigation. Bring us in at attack vector Theta 6. Maintain cloak until my command. I turned to communications. Prepare broadcast on all frequencies once we decloak. The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency as Leviathan closed on the unsuspecting Grail ships. I could feel the tension building, not fear, but anticipation. For years, we had trained for this moment, rehearsing scenarios, running simulations. Now we would put theory into practice. Range to target, 20,000 kilometers in closing, reported the tactical officer. Lock weapons on the secondary vessels first, I ordered. Prepare to fire on my command. Weapons locked. 5,000 kilometers. I waited until we were practically on top of them. Disengage cloak. Fire all weapons. Leviathan shimmered into visibility, its massive black hull appearing like a hole in space directly above the pirate fleet. Before they could react, our kinetic cannons opened fire, accelerating metal slugs to a significant fraction of light speed. The first salvo tore through the nearest Ravager ship, shredding its engines and weapons arrays in seconds. Direct hit on Target 1, Tactical reported. Their reactor is destabilizing. The second Ravager managed to raise shields, but our particle beams cut through their defenses like paper. Their hull ruptured, atmosphere venting into space as the crew was exposed to vacuum. Target 2 disabled, Burke confirmed. Their life support is failing. The Blood Tide, recognizing the threat, began to turn, bringing its main guns to bear on Leviathan. Too late. Fire missile barrage. Pattern Delta, I ordered. Target their propulsion and weapon systems. A swarm of missiles erupted from Leviathan's launch tubes, each one packed with enough explosives to level a small city. The Blood Tide's point defense systems managed to intercept some, but the sheer number overwhelmed their countermeasures. Explosions blossomed across the pirate flagship's hull. "Broadcast now," I commanded. Our communications officer activated the channel, and I spoke the words I had rehearsed countless times in my mind. "Attention, Grail vessels. This is Colonel Jackson Cole of the Earth defense vessel Leviathan. You are engaged in the illegal enslavement of Earth citizens. Surrender immediately, or be destroyed." The response was predictable. A barrage of weapons fire that splashed harmlessly against Leviathan's shields. "Their weapons are ineffective," Burke reported, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. "Shields holding at 98%. Target their bridge," I ordered. "Prepare boarding parties. I want those colonists rescued." Leviathan's main cannon charged, the energy buildup causing the lights to dim momentarily throughout the ship. When it fired, a blinding beam of concentrated energy lanced out, striking the Blood Tide's command center with surgical precision. The pirate vessel's bridge disappeared in a ball of expanding gas and debris. "Boarders away," Burke confirmed, as our assault shuttles launched from Leviathan's bay, heading toward the stricken flagship. What followed was 20 minutes of controlled chaos as our Marines fought their way through the Blood Tide, securing decks and freeing captives. The Grail crews, faced with an overwhelming force they couldn't hope to defeat, began surrendering in droves. I watched the operation from the bridge, directing resources where needed, coordinating the evacuation of wounded colonists to our medical bay. This was what Leviathan had been built for. Not conquest, but protection. "Colonel," Teller called out, his voice tense. "We're picking up a transmission from the Blood Tide's communications array. It's aimed at a council relay station." "Jam it," I ordered immediately. "Too late, sir. The message was sent. Short burst, highly encrypted." I felt a cold weight settle in my stomach. "Can you decode it?" Teller worked his console for several seconds. "Partial decryption only. It contains coordinates, authentication codes, and—" "Sir, it's a distress call specifically formatted for Council internal security forces." Burke met my gaze across the bridge. "They're calling for reinforcements." I nodded, making a quick decision. "Complete the evacuation. Destroy the remaining Grail vessels once all colonists are secure. We need to be gone before the Council arrives." "And go where, sir?" Burke asked quietly. "Once the Council knows about Leviathan, they'll hunt us across the galaxy." I smiled grimly. "Then we'll give them something to chase. Set course for Earth orbit once evacuation is complete. It's time humanity's homeworld saw what we've built in their name." "Earth?" Burke's eyes widened. "The Council maintains a permanent presence there. Their diplomatic fleet alone has enough firepower to be utterly destroyed by Leviathan." I finished for her. "We've hidden long enough, Commander. Now we show our teeth." The journey to Earth took less time than I had anticipated. With the Grail ships destroyed and the colonists safely delivered to a neutral medical station, Leviathan moved through space, uncontested. Our advanced drive systems propelling us toward humanity's ancestral home at speeds that would have been impossible for conventional vessels. Earth appeared on our view screen, a blue-green jewel set against the blackness of space. It had been years since I'd seen it, and the sight stirred something primal within me. This was what we were fighting for, not just the planet itself, but what it represented. The cradle of human civilization, reduced to a vassal state by alien bureaucrats who saw us as little more than a resource to be exploited. "Council diplomatic fleet detected in high orbit," Teller reported. 5 vessels, Arbiter class. They're conducting routine patrols. The Arbiter-class ships were the Council's standard diplomatic escorts, heavily armed vessels disguised as ceremonial craft. They enforced the Council's will throughout the galaxy, particularly in systems deemed too volatile for self-governance. "Any reaction to our presence?" I asked. "Negative. Our cloak is holding." I nodded, satisfied. "Take us into low orbit. Prepare to broadcast on all Earth frequencies." Burke shifted uncomfortably beside me. Colonel, revealing ourselves to Earth before we've secured allies might be premature. The Council could retaliate against civilian populations. They already are, I reminded her. The Grail attack wasn't an isolated incident. It's been happening for decades, centuries, even. The Council keeps humanity weak by design. I turned to face the bridge crew. Disengage cloak. Power all weapon systems. Target the Council flagship. The bridge fell silent as Leviathan shimmered into visibility directly above Earth's northern hemisphere. On the planet below, I knew alarms would be sounding in every military and governmental installation. Sensors that had never detected anything more threatening than a civilian transport would now be registering a warship of unprecedented size and power. Council vessels are reacting, Teller reported. They're raising shields and powering weapons. Let them, I said calmly, open a channel to all frequencies, Earth, orbital stations, and the Council fleet. The communications officer nodded, and I straightened in my chair. Attention, people of Earth and representatives of the Galactic Council. I am Colonel Jackson Cole, commanding the Earth defense vessel Leviathan. For too long, humanity has been subjugated by Council mandates that restrict our right to self-defense while turning a blind eye to attacks on our colonies. I paused, letting my words sink in. The recent attack on Hyperion is just the latest example of Council-sanctioned violence against human settlements. We have confirmed that the Grail Syndicate operates with Council approval, using ships bearing official registry codes. On the tactical display, I could see the Council vessels forming a defensive perimeter, preparing to engage. Leviathan was built in secret by those who refused to accept humanity's subservient role in the galaxy. We will no longer stand idle while our people are enslaved, our resources plundered, and our sovereignty denied. The lead Council ship fired a warning shot, an energy pulse that dissipated harmlessly against Leviathan's shields. To demonstrate our resolve, we will now neutralize the Council forces currently threatening Earth. I nodded to the tactical officer. Target their weapons and propulsion systems. Disable. Don't destroy. Leviathan's weapons arrays came online, and precision beams lanced out, striking each Council vessel with surgical accuracy. Their shields flared and failed, and secondary explosions rippled across their hulls as key systems were destroyed. All Council vessels disabled, Tactical confirmed. They're dead in space. I returned my attention to the broadcast. To the Council, this is your only warning. Remove your forces from Earth and all human colonies, or face the consequences. To the people of Earth, the time has come to reclaim our independence. Leviathan stands ready to defend humanity's right to determine its own destiny. I signaled for the channel to be closed, then turned to Burke. Deploy drones to monitor Council communications. I want to know their response the moment it comes. She nodded, her expression a mixture of awe and concern. And now? Now we disappear, I said. Reactivate the cloak. Set course for the Xerxes station. Xerxes. Burke's eyebrows rose. That's pirate territory. Former pirate territory, I corrected. Governor Ryle controls it now, and he owes me a favor. We'll need allies and resources for what comes next. As Leviathan vanished from Earth's sensors, I knew we had just changed the course of human history. The Council would respond with overwhelming force. It was their only play. They couldn't allow a subject species to challenge their authority so openly. But for the first time in centuries, humanity had the means to fight back. The Council's response came faster and more violently than even I had anticipated. Within hours of our departure from Earth, all human colonies were placed under martial law. Council warships established blockades around major settlements, and Earth itself was subjected to a complete communications blackout. But the most troubling development came from our intelligence network. Teller brought the news personally, his face grim as he entered my ready room. Colonel, our contacts on Earth have confirmed that Prime Minister Monroe has issued a statement condemning Leviathan as a rogue operation conducted without government authorization. He's offering full cooperation with Council forces to locate and destroy us. I wasn't surprised. Monroe had always been a council puppet, more concerned with maintaining his position than protecting the people he was supposed to represent. "He's trying to save his own skin," I said dismissively. "What about public reaction?" Teller allowed himself a small smile. "That's the interesting part, sir. Despite the official condemnation, there have been demonstrations in support of Leviathan in every major Earth city. The colonial administrations are even more vocal. They're demanding the right to establish their own defense forces." It was working. The sight of Leviathan, proof that humans could build and operate technology the Council had long denied us, had ignited a spark of defiance that had been smoldering for generations. "And the Council military response?" I asked. "Substantial. They've mobilized 3 battle groups from their central fleet. Initial estimates suggest over 50 capital ships are being deployed to human space." Burke, who had joined us midway through the briefing, whistled softly. 50 ships against 1. Those are better odds than I expected. I shot her a look. "Your optimism is noted, Commander." "It's not optimism, sir. It's mathematics. They could have sent 100. She had a point. The Council controlled thousands of warships spread across the galaxy. Committing only 50 to this operation suggested either a reluctance to appear overly aggressive or, more likely, a fundamental misunderstanding of what they were facing. "They think this will be over quickly," I mused. "One rogue vessel against the might of the Council fleet. They expect us to be overwhelmed by superior numbers." "And we won't be?" Teller asked carefully. I stood and walked to the viewport, staring out at the stars as Leviathan hurtled toward the Xerxes station. "We have advantages they don't know about. The skip drive, the Mark 7 core, and most importantly, we have nothing to lose." Burke cleared her throat. "Speaking of advantages, we're approaching Xerxes. Governor Ryle has acknowledged our request for docking, but wants to speak with you privately before granting permission." "Of course he does," I muttered. Ryle was a former Outer Rim border commander who had seized control of Xerxes during a period of political instability. He controlled a substantial militia and, more importantly, a network of supply chains that operated outside Council oversight. "Arrange the call and prepare a detailed inventory of what we need: fuel, ammunition, provisions. We won't get another resupply opportunity for some time." As Burke and Teller left to carry out their tasks, I remained at the viewport, contemplating our next move. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but there was no turning back. We had revealed ourselves to the galaxy, and now we had to prove that humanity deserved its freedom. Governor Reel's weathered face appeared on the view screen, his expression carefully neutral. I had known him years ago, when we both served in Earth's Token Border Patrol, a force permitted by the Council only because it posed no threat to their interests. "Colonel Cole," he said by way of greeting, "you've been busy." "Hello, Reel. It's been a while." He snorted. 5 years of silence. Then suddenly you reappear commanding the most powerful warship I've ever seen. The Council has placed a bounty on your head that would buy a small planet. "I'm flattered." "Don't be. They're scared, and scared bureaucrats are dangerous." He leaned forward. "Now tell me why I should risk everything by helping you." I met his gaze steadily. "Because you know as well as I do that the Council will never allow humanity to determine its own destiny. They've kept us weak and divided for centuries. Ryle, Leviathan is our one chance to break that cycle." "One ship against the Council fleet?" He shook his head. "That's not a rebellion, Cole. That's suicide." "We won't be alone for long. Every human colony that sees Leviathan will know what's possible. The Council's grip is already slipping." Reel was silent for a long moment, considering. Finally, he sighed. "What do you need?" "Fuel, supplies, ammunition, and information, particularly about Council internal security operations in human space." His eyebrows rose. "Internal security? You're aiming high." They're the ones enforcing council rule on our colonies. Cut off the head, and the body follows. Real rubbed his chin thoughtfully. I might have something for you. A former pirate named Merrick controls a network of informants throughout council space. For the right price, he could provide intelligence on internal security movements. And what would that price be? That's between you and him. But I warn you, Cole, Merrick serves no cause but his own. I nodded. Arrange a meeting, and grant us docking permission. My crew has been in space too long. The screen went dark, and I found myself alone with my thoughts once more. Allies like Ryle and Merrick were necessary, but they came with their own agendas, their own risks. Trust would be in short supply in the days ahead. But trust had never been a luxury I could afford. Not since the day I committed to building Leviathan. Not since I chose to pit humanity against the most powerful political entity in the galaxy. Xerxes Station hung in space like a malformed spider, its central hub surrounded by docking arms that extended in all directions. Originally built as a mining outpost, it had evolved over decades into a hub for commerce that existed outside council regulations. Some legal, most not. Leviathan dwarfed the station as we approached, our massive hull casting shadows across its weathered surface. Despite Ryle's permission, I limited shore leave to essential personnel only. The fewer people who knew about Leviathan's presence, the better. Merrick was waiting in Reel's private quarters when I arrived, flanked by Burke and 2 security officers. He was a tall, lean man with the hard eyes of someone who had seen too much of the galaxy's darkness. A jagged scar ran from his left temple to his chin, bisecting an otherwise handsome face. "The famous Colonel Cole," he drawled, not bothering to stand. "Architect of humanity's last hope, or final doom, depending on who you ask." I ignored the provocation. "Governor Reel says you have information about Council internal security operations." Straight to business. Merrick smiled thinly. "I appreciate that in a military man." He reached into his jacket and withdrew a data crystal, turning it over in his fingers. "This contains the locations of 6 internal security black sites in human space. Detention centers where they hold political prisoners, dissidents, anyone who questions council authority too loudly." My interest was immediately piqued. "How did you obtain this?" "I used to transport prisoners for them. Good money. No questions asked." He shrugged. "Until I started asking questions anyway." "And what do you want in exchange?" Merrick leaned forward. "A place on your ship." It was the last thing I had expected. "You want to join Leviathan's crew?" "I want to be on the winning side," he corrected. "And despite the odds, I think that might be you." I studied him carefully. "You're not a freedom fighter, Merrick. You're a mercenary. Why risk your life for our cause?" "Because I've seen what the Council does to humans who step out of line. The processing centers where they break people's minds, the labor camps where they work them to death." His expression hardened. "I'm not a good man, Colonel. But even I have limits to what I can stomach." I glanced at Burke, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. Despite her reservations about Merrick's character, she recognized the value of his information. "The data first," I said. "If it checks out, we'll discuss your role aboard Leviathan." Merrick handed over the crystal without hesitation. "You'll find it accurate. And there's a bonus. Security codes for the internal security communications network. You'll know their movements before they do." As Teller took the crystal for analysis, I found myself reassessing Merrick. He was clearly self-interested, but his knowledge of council operations could prove invaluable. "Why these detention centers?" I asked. "What makes them strategic targets?" Merrick's smile was cold. "Because of who they're holding. Scientists, engineers, military strategists, the best minds of humanity, imprisoned because they dared to imagine a future where we weren't council slaves." And suddenly, I understood the full significance of what he was offering. It wasn't just a military target. It was a recruitment opportunity, the chance to free the very people who could help us build more ships like Leviathan. If this information is accurate, I said carefully, you'll have earned your place. But understand this, on my ship, you follow my orders without question. There are no independent operators on Leviathan. Merrick inclined his head. Of course, Colonel. I'm a businessman, not a fool. I know the value of a clear chain of command. I didn't trust him, not completely. But in war, perfect allies are a luxury few can afford. And make no mistake, we were at war now, a war for humanity's future. Teller confirmed the authenticity of Merrick's data, and our course was set. Operation Nightfall, a coordinated strike against Council detention facilities, would begin within 48 hours. For the first time since leaving Europa, Leviathan would use its skip drive, appearing simultaneously at multiple locations to maximize the element of surprise. As I reviewed the final assault plans in my quarters, a priority message arrived from our network of informants on Earth. My blood ran cold as I read it. Prime Minister Monroe, traveling to Kuiper Station for secret negotiations with Council representatives, prepared to offer Leviathan's location in exchange for personal amnesty and continued Earth autonomy. Betrayal. It shouldn't have surprised me, yet somehow it did. Monroe was willing to sacrifice everything we had built, everything we were fighting for, to save his own position. I summoned Burke, Teller, and our newly appointed strategic advisor, Merrick, to my ready room. Their reactions to the intelligence mirrored my own. Anger, disgust, but not surprise. This changes our priorities, I said, pacing the length of the room. We can't allow Monroe to sell us out to the Council. Kuiper Station is heavily defended, Burke cautioned. It's a Council diplomatic hub, with at least 3 warships in permanent residence. Merrick leaned against the wall, his expression calculating. There's another concern. If Monroe is meeting Council representatives at Kuiper, it means internal security will be coordinating the security arrangements. Our codes might be compromised. I nodded, acknowledging the risk. Then, we changed the plan. Instead of spreading our forces thin across multiple targets, we concentrate on Kuiper. One decisive strike to capture Monroe and expose his treachery to Earth and all the colonies. Teller frowned. That's a significant deviation from our original strategy. Colonel, the detention centers hold valuable potential allies. They'll still be there after we deal with Monroe, I countered. But if he gives the Council our location, our ability to operate freely will be severely compromised. The debate continued for hours, with valid points raised on both sides. Some, like Burke, argued that attacking a diplomatic station would only reinforce the Council's narrative that we were dangerous extremists. Others, like Merrick, insisted that the opportunity to capture both Monroe and Council representatives was too valuable to pass up. In the end, the decision was mine alone. And as I studied the holographic display of Kuiper Station, a massive structure located at a strategic junction between human space and the Council core worlds, I knew what had to be done. Prepare for skip drive activation, I ordered. Target, Kuiper Station. We launch in 6 hours. The skip drive was Leviathan's most closely guarded secret, a propulsion system that could instantaneously transport the ship across vast distances without the limitations of conventional FTL travel. Developed in secret by Earth scientists, working from fragmented alien technology, it had never been tested in combat conditions. Until now, as the countdown to activation reached its final minutes, I addressed the crew from the bridge. What we do today will determine the course of human history for generations to come. Prime Minister Monroe has betrayed not just Leviathan, but all of humanity. By offering to surrender our position to the Council, he has proven that he serves alien masters, not the people of Earth. The bridge was silent, every face grim with determination. Our mission is clear. Capture Monroe and the Council representatives. Secure evidence of their conspiracy and broadcast it to every human settlement in the galaxy. Let all of humanity see the truth of their subjugation. I took my seat in the command chair as the skip drive reached full power. The ship hummed around us, energy building to levels that made the air itself feel charged. "Skip drive activated," announced the engineering officer. "Coordinates locked. Jump in 3, 2, 1. Reality seemed to bend, the view screen showing stars stretching and compressing in impossible ways. For a fraction of a second, Leviathan existed everywhere and nowhere at once. Then, with a flash of released energy, we appeared in orbit around Kuiper Station. "Status report," I demanded, fighting the momentary disorientation that accompanied skip drive usage. "All systems functional," Burke confirmed. "Minimal power fluctuations. The skip was successful." "Tactical, what are we facing?" Teller's fingers flew across his console. 3 Council warships as expected. Station defenses active but not yet targeting us. They're still processing our sudden appearance. "We have the element of surprise," I noted. "Use it. Target the warship's propulsion systems. Disable them before they can respond." Leviathan's weapons arrays came online, and targeted beams of energy lanced out, striking each Council vessel with precision. Secondary explosions blossomed along their hulls as engines and weapon systems were systematically destroyed. "Council vessels neutralized," Tactical reported. "Station defenses are now tracking us." "Open a channel to the station," I ordered. "All frequencies." The communications officer nodded, and I straightened in my chair. "Kuiper Station. This is Colonel Jackson Cole of the Earth Defense Vessel Leviathan. We know that Prime Minister Monroe is aboard conducting unauthorized negotiations with Council representatives. Surrender him and the Council delegation immediately, or we will be forced to board your station." The response was immediate, a barrage of defensive fire that splashed harmlessly against Leviathan's shields. "They're buying time," Merrick observed from his position near Tactical. "Internal security protocols. Standard procedure is to destroy all evidence of negotiations if compromised." I nodded grimly. "Then we don't give them time. Deploy boarding teams. Primary objective: capture Monroe and the Council representatives. Secondary objective: secure all communication logs and meeting records." "Boarders away," Burke confirmed as our assault shuttles launched toward the station. What followed was 20 minutes of coordinated chaos. Our boarding teams, led by veteran officers, fought their way through Kuiper's defensive perimeter. The station's security forces were numerous, but poorly trained for actual combat. Most had never faced anything more threatening than drunken diplomats. I monitored the operation from the bridge, directing resources and adjusting tactics as the situation evolved. When our forces reached the central conference chamber, they found it empty. The meeting had been moved at the first sign of danger. "Sweep the station," I ordered over the tactical net. "Check all VIP quarters and escape pod bays." It was Merrick who eventually located Monroe, attempting to board a Council diplomatic shuttle in one of the auxiliary hangars. The Prime Minister was accompanied by 2 Council representatives, tall, willowy beings with the characteristic pale skin and elongated features of the dominant Arcadian species. "We have them," Merrick reported over the comm. "Monroe and 2 Council dignitaries. They're secured and being transported back to Leviathan." I should have felt triumph. Instead, I felt only a deep, aching sadness for what humanity had become, so broken by centuries of subjugation that our own leaders would betray us to maintain the status quo. "Colonel," Teller called urgently from his station. "The station's reactor is showing unusual power fluctuations. I think they're initiating a self-destruct sequence." Of course they were. The Council couldn't risk evidence of their conspiracy becoming public. "Order all boarding teams to return immediately," I commanded. "Priority evacuation, leave everything non-essential." As our forces retreated to their shuttles, Kuiper Station's internal systems began to fail. Lights flickered, gravity wavered, and atmospheric containment breaches were reported throughout the structure. All shuttles recovered, Burke reported, as the last of our teams docked with Leviathan. We have Monroe and the council representatives in custody. Distance us from the station, I ordered. Prepare for skip drive activation. Leviathan pulled away from Kuiper just as the station's reactor reached critical mass. The explosion was spectacular, a blossoming sphere of energy that consumed the station and the disabled council vessels nearby. Within seconds, nothing remained but scattered debris. In my ready room, I faced Prime Minister Monroe across a simple metal table. He had aged considerably since I last saw him in person, his once commanding presence diminished by fear and the knowledge of his own treachery. "You've doomed us all, Cole," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The Council will never forgive this. They'll strip Earth bare, reduce us to a primitive state." "They were already doing that," I replied evenly. "Slowly, methodically, one restriction at a time. The only difference is that now we're fighting back." "Fighting?" He laughed bitterly. "You call this fighting? One ship against the combined might of the Council? It's suicide. And you've dragged all of humanity into your death wish." I leaned forward. "What exactly did you offer them, Monroe? My head on a platter? Leviathan schematics? What was the price of your continued rule over a subjugated Earth?" He looked away, unable to meet my gaze. "You don't understand the complexities of galactic politics. Sometimes survival requires compromise." "No," I said firmly. "Survival requires courage. It requires standing up for what's right, even when the odds seem impossible." "And what gives you the right to make that decision for all of humanity?" he demanded, finding a spark of his old fire. "You're not elected. You have no mandate." I stood, towering over him. "My mandate comes from every human who's been enslaved by the Grail Syndicate, while the Council looked the other way. From every colony that's been stripped of resources without fair compensation. From every scientist denied the right to advance human knowledge because it might threaten Council supremacy." I moved to the door. "You'll be held until we can arrange a proper trial, not by the Council, but by representatives of all human colonies. Let them decide your fate." As I left Monroe to contemplate his future, Burke met me in the corridor, her expression grave. "Colonel, long-range sensors have detected a massive Council fleet assembling near Saturn. Preliminary count suggests 30 capital ships, with support vessels. I had expected this. The attack on Kuiper Station and the capture of Council representatives had forced their hand. They could no longer treat Leviathan as a simple rogue element. We had become an existential threat to their authority." "How long until they're ready to engage?" I asked. "At their current rate of deployment, 12 hours at most." I nodded, my mind already formulating a plan. "Gather the senior staff in the tactical room. It's time to make our stand." The Saturn rings would be our battleground, a vast field of ice and rock that would limit the Council fleet's ability to coordinate and maneuver. We would be outnumbered, outgunned by conventional metrics. But Leviathan had never been designed for conventional warfare. As I studied the tactical display showing the approaching Council armada, I felt a strange calm settle over me. This was the moment everything had been building toward. Not just the 5 years spent constructing Leviathan, but centuries of human subjugation, of being told we weren't worthy of determining our own destiny. Today, that changed. Win or lose, humanity would never be the same after this battle. "All hands to battle stations," I ordered. "Prepare for combat operations." The Council fleet was magnificent in its terrible beauty. 30 capital ships arranged in perfect formation, their sleek hulls gleaming in the distant sunlight. Support vessels swarmed around them like insects attending queens, creating a wall of firepower that few civilizations in the galaxy could hope to challenge. We watched from within Saturn's rings, Leviathan's stealth systems rendering us invisible to their sensors. The ice and rock debris provided additional cover, allowing us to observe their deployment without risk of detection. "They're spreading out," Teller noted, studying the tactical display. "Standard search pattern. They know we're here somewhere." I nodded. "They expect us to run, to use the skip drive to escape to some distant corner of the galaxy." "Why aren't we?" asked one of the junior officers, immediately looking embarrassed at his outburst. Instead of reprimanding him, I addressed his question directly. "Because running would send a message to every human colony that resistance is futile, that when faced with overwhelming force, we fold. That's not the message Leviathan was built to deliver." I turned to the tactical display. "We fight, not just for ourselves, but for every human who has ever dreamed of true independence." The plan was audacious, bordering on insane. While the Council fleet searched methodically through the rings, we would use the skip drive for a micro-jump, appearing directly in the center of their formation. Before they could react, we would target their command ship, the Judicator, and eliminate it with a concentrated barrage. The resulting confusion would give us the opening to inflict maximum damage before skipping away to regroup. "Skip drive charged and ready," reported engineering. "Coordinates locked on the center of their formation." "All weapon systems online," confirmed tactical. "Primary target acquired." I took a deep breath. "Execute skip in 3, 2, 1. The familiar disorientation of skip drive activation washed over the bridge. When reality reasserted itself, we were surrounded by Council warships, their massive hulls looming on all sides. "Fire all weapons! Target the Judicator!" Leviathan unleashed its full arsenal: kinetic cannons, particle beams, and missile salvos, all directed at the Council flagship. The attack was so sudden, so unexpected, that their shields were only partially raised. Our first salvo tore through their defensive systems, ripping massive gashes in the Judicator's hull. "Direct hit on target," tactical reported. "Their primary power grid is failing." The Council fleet reacted with predictable confusion. Some vessels turned to engage us, while others maintained their original positions, unsure of the threat. Their formation, designed for a prolonged search operation, was now a liability. Ships blocked each other's firing arcs, unable to bring their full firepower to bear. "Secondary targets locked," Burke announced. "Firing solution ready." "Execute," I ordered. Another barrage erupted from Leviathan's weapons arrays, this time targeting the vessels closest to us. 2 Council destroyers erupted in flames as our kinetic rounds penetrated their reactor shielding. But the element of surprise couldn't last forever. The remaining Council ships were adjusting their positions, bringing their weapons to bear on our location. "Multiple targeting locks detected," Teller warned. "They're coordinating their fire." The first salvo from the Council fleet struck Leviathan's shields with devastating force. The ship shuddered, emergency alerts sounding throughout the bridge. "Shields at 78% and dropping," reported engineering. "We can't sustain this level of bombardment for long." I had anticipated this. "Prepare for secondary skip. Target coordinates, Sector 749. As Leviathan's skip drive recharged, we continued to exchange fire with the Council fleet. Our advanced targeting systems allowed us to inflict significant damage, but their sheer numbers meant we were taking increasingly heavy hits. "Skip drive at 90% charge," engineering reported. 60 seconds to activation." "Colonel," Burke called urgently. "The Judicator is attempting to flee. Their engines are damaged but operational." I couldn't allow the Council flagship to escape. Its destruction was crucial to our strategy, not just militarily, but symbolically. The Judicator was the physical embodiment of Council authority in this sector. "Belay the skip order," I commanded. "Divert all power to forward shields and engines. Pursuit course on the Judicator." Leviathan surged forward, cutting through the Council formation with reckless speed. Enemy fire intensified as we became an easier target, but our reinforced forward shields held, barely. "Range to Judicator, 5,000 kilometers in closing," tactical reported. "Prepare the Mark 7 core for overload sequence," I ordered quietly. Burke's head snapped up, her eyes wide. Colonel, a Mark 7 overload would... I know exactly what it would do. Commander, the Council does too. That's why they banned the technology. The Mark 7 core was Leviathan's primary power source, a system so advanced that most civilizations couldn't even comprehend its principles, let alone duplicate them. When destabilized, it could generate an energy wave capable of disabling any ship within its radius without destroying them completely. It was the ultimate show of force, and potentially suicidal for the vessel that initiated it. Ranged adjudicator, 2,000 kilometers. Tactical updated. Begin Mark 7 destabilization sequence, I ordered. Set radius for maximum effect. As engineering carried out my commands, I opened a channel to all frequencies, Council ships, human colonies, and Earth itself. This is Colonel Jackson Cole of the Earth defense vessel Leviathan. To the Council fleet, you have one chance to withdraw from human space immediately. If you refuse, we will activate our Mark 7 core overload sequence, disabling your entire fleet. I paused, letting the threat sink in. To all human colonies, today marks the beginning of a new era. The Terran Free Alliance is hereby established, an independent confederation of human worlds dedicated to mutual defense and self-determination. Any colony that wishes to join will receive the full protection of Leviathan and the ships that will follow. The Council's response was predictable, increased firepower directed at our position. But I detected hesitation in their attack pattern. The mention of a Mark 7 core had clearly unsettled them. Mark 7 destabilization at 60%, engineering reported. Point of no return approaching. They're not backing down, Burke observed grimly. I didn't expect them to, I replied. But now they know what they're facing. As Leviathan closed on the Judicator, the Council flagship made a desperate attempt to escape, its damaged engines straining to reach FTL velocity. Too late. Fire all remaining weapons, I ordered. Target their engine nacelles. Our final barrage struck the Judicator with devastating precision, severing its propulsion systems completely. The massive vessel began to drift, emergency systems flickering across its hull. Mark 7 destabilization at 90%. Engineering reported. Core temperature approaching critical limits. I took a deep breath. Broadcast to all frequencies. This is your final warning. Withdraw or be neutralized. For a moment, the universe seemed to hold its breath. Then, slowly, the Council vessels began to pull back, creating distance between themselves and the disabled Judicator. They're retreating, Burke whispered, disbelief evident in her voice. Not retreating, I corrected. Regrouping, but it gives us the opening we need. I turned to engineering. Initiate Mark 7 pulse, now. The effect was instantaneous and spectacular. A wave of energy erupted from Leviathan's core, expanding outward in a perfect sphere. As it engulfed the Council ships, their systems failed one by one. Weapons, shields, engines, all rendered temporarily inoperative by the pulse. Leviathan itself shuddered violently as the backlash of energy surged through our systems. Emergency lighting activated as primary power failed, and damage reports flooded in from all sections. But we had achieved our objective. The Council fleet was neutralized, at least temporarily, and more importantly, we had demonstrated humanity's technological capability to the galaxy. Status report, I demanded, pulling myself up from the deck, where the final shockwave had thrown me. Multiple systems offline, Burke reported, wiping blood from a cut on her forehead. Weapons arrays damaged, shields at minimal capacity, skip drive temporarily disabled. And the Council fleet? Teller managed a weak smile. Completely disabled. Estimated recovery time, 6 to 8 hours. It was enough. Enough time to make emergency repairs. Enough time to send our message to the colonies. Enough time to establish the foundation of the Terran Free Alliance. Begin damage control operations, I ordered. Priority on propulsion and life support. And open a channel to Xerxes Station. It's time to call in all our allies. As the crew carried out my orders, I stared at the view screen showing the drifting, powerless Council vessels. For the first time in centuries, a human ship had faced the full might of the Council and emerged victorious. It was just the beginning of a long struggle. I harbored no illusions about that. The Council would return with even greater force, determined to crush this rebellion before it could spread. But they would find a different humanity waiting for them. A humanity that had tasted freedom and would never again accept subjugation. In the days that followed the Battle of Saturn, news of Leviathan's victory spread throughout human space like wildfire. Colonial administrations that had once cowered under Council authority now openly declared their independence, pledging allegiance to the newly formed Terran Free Alliance. Mars, Titan, Europa, and a dozen other settlements issued formal declarations of sovereignty. Militia forces seized control of Council installations, and human officials who had collaborated with our oppressors were removed from power, some peacefully, others not. Earth itself remained divided. Prime Minister Monroe's government collapsed following the release of evidence showing his willingness to betray humanity for personal gain. Regional powers asserted independence, with some joining the alliance while others maintained neutrality. Leviathan became a symbol of this new human spirit, damaged but unbowed, patrolling the borders of Alliance space as repairs continued around the clock. We had lost 37 crew members in the battle, with many more injured. Each loss weighed heavily on my conscience, but I knew they had died for something greater than themselves. I stood on the observation deck, watching as shuttles ferried supplies and personnel between Leviathan and the growing fleet of converted vessels that now served the Alliance. Many were civilian ships, hastily outfitted with weapons. But they represented something profound: humanity's determination to defend itself. Burke joined me, looking markedly better than she had in the immediate aftermath of the battle. The cut on her forehead had healed, leaving only a faint scar that would likely fade with time. "The Council has issued a formal condemnation of the Alliance," she reported. "They're declaring us outlaws and promising severe consequences for any world that supports us." "Empty threats," I replied. "They can't admit how badly we hurt them at Saturn. It would undermine their image of invincibility." "But they will return," she said. Not a question, but a statement of fact. "Yes, with a larger fleet, better prepared for what we can do." I turned to face her. "Which is why we won't be here when they arrive." Her eyebrows rose. "Sir?" "The skip drive is operational again. Once repairs are complete, we're taking Leviathan deep into Council space." "An offensive?" She looked skeptical. "We're still recovering from the last battle." I shook my head. "Not an offensive. A trial. The Council has committed crimes against humanity for centuries. Leviathan will serve as a mobile court, broadcasting evidence of their atrocities to every species under their rule." Understanding dawned in her eyes. "You're not just fighting for human independence. You're trying to bring down the entire Council." "The Council survives by maintaining the illusion of benevolent authority," I explained. "But underneath that facade is a system built on exploitation and inequality. If other subjugated species see what we've accomplished, it could trigger a galaxy-wide revolution." Burke was silent for a long moment, processing the implications. "That's ambitious, sir." "It's necessary," I corrected. "Humanity can't truly be free as long as the Council exists in its current form. We need allies, other species who have suffered as we have." She nodded slowly. "And the prisoner transfer? The Council representatives we captured at Kuiper?" "They'll stand trial first. Their testimony will be our opening statement to the galaxy." As we spoke, a squadron of Alliance fighters performed a flyby, their engines leaving trails of ionized gas against the blackness of space. It was a salute to Leviathan, spontaneous, unofficial, but deeply meaningful. "The crew is ready, sir," Burke said, watching the display. "Whatever comes next, they'll follow you." I nodded. grateful for her confidence but acutely aware of the responsibility it represented. Every person aboard Leviathan had committed everything to our cause. They deserved a leader worthy of their sacrifice. "Then let's not keep them waiting," I replied. "We have a galaxy to liberate." As I returned to the bridge, I knew that the battle we had fought at Saturn was merely the opening salvo in a much larger conflict. The Council would not surrender its power without a fight, and many more lives would be lost before this was over. But for the first time in centuries, humanity controlled its own destiny. We had shattered the chains of oppression and emerged as a force to be reckoned with in the galaxy. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and difficult choices. But as Leviathan prepared for its next mission, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: hope, not just for myself or my crew, but for all of humanity. The stars no longer seemed cold and distant. They beckoned with possibility, with the promise of a future where humans stood as equals among the species of the galaxy. And Leviathan would lead the way,